Okay, you've seen it everywhere, right? Your social media feed is probably flooded with people jumping into tubs of ice. The cold plunge has absolutely exploded. But is this just another wellness trend that's going to fade away, or is there some real science behind the shock? Let's dive in and figure it out.
And this is the pitch, right? This is what you always hear. It's framed as this elite, science-backed tool. Something used by the best of the best, top athletes, A-list celebrities. When you hear that kind of endorsement, it's pretty hard not to get at least a little curious.
But that leads us to the real question we have to ask. Are we looking at a genuine wellness breakthrough here? Or is this just a risky trend that happens to look really impressive on camera? That's what this is all about. We're going to cut through the noise and separate the hard science from the social media hype.
So here's our game plan. We'll start with why this is so popular, the icy allure. Then we'll get into the science of what's happening in your body. We'll examine all those big claims you hear. Look at a really interesting special case with Raynaud's, map out a plan for your first plunge if you're considering it, and then we'll get to the cold, hard truth.
So, how in the world did jumping into freezing water become one of the hottest, and I mean hottest, wellness trends out there? Well, it's a classic story of some really compelling personalities making some even more compelling claims.
It really started gaining momentum with pioneers like Wim Hof. You probably heard of him, the Iceman. But then it just went into the stratosphere when celebrities, we're talking Joe Rogan, Chris Hemsworth, Lady Gaga, started broadcasting it to millions. They claimed it was their secret weapon for everything from faster muscle recovery to bulletproof mental resilience. And just like that, a pretty niche practice went completely mainstream. Okay, so let's put the hype aside for a second. What is actually going on inside your body the moment you hit that freezing water? It's way more than just a feeling of being cold. It's a powerful, lightning-fast biological chain reaction. Let's break down exactly what that is. So the second you get in, your body triggers what's called the cold shock response. This is a massive, immediate stress response. You can literally think of it as your body's 5-alarm fire drill. Your sympathetic nervous system, that's your fight or flight mode, and this thing called the HPA axis, they both just slam on the gas, preparing you to survive what your brain perceives as a life-threatening situation.
Now here's where it gets really interesting. What does that response actually do? Well, for one, you get a huge hormonal surge. We're talking a 2 to 3-fold increase in norepinephrine. This is a super important hormone and neurotransmitter that's tied to focus, alertness, and mood. And this isn't just a quick blip either. Those levels can stay elevated for hours after you climb out of the water.
And then there's the big one everyone talks about, dopamine, the motivation molecule. You get a staggering 5-fold increase. But, and this is a huge but, there's a major scientific catch. This is what's known as peripheral dopamine. It's flowing through your body, not your brain, because it can't get past something called the blood-brain barrier. So while it's a massive effect, it's not the same thing as the dopamine rush you get in your brain's reward centers. It's a really important distinction.
All right, so now that we know what's happening chemically, let's take a hard look at the biggest claims you hear about cold plunging. This is where we really have to separate what people feel, which is very real, from what the scientific research actually backs up.
Okay, first up, mental health. The claim is that it's a powerful tool for depression. And look, people absolutely report feeling amazing, almost euphoric after a plunge. Studies do confirm a temporary mood boost. But when you look at the really high-quality long-term studies, like a major randomized trial on cryotherapy, there was no significant difference in depression scores over time compared to the group that did nothing. So the takeaway, the immediate high is real, but the evidence for it being a lasting antidepressant just isn't there yet.
How about weight loss? You hear this one all the time. The idea is that the cold activates something called brown fat, which is a special type of fat that burns calories to generate heat. Sounds great, but here's the reality check. As adults, we have very, very little of it. And even if you activate all of it, you're talking about burning an extra 40 to 90 calories. To put that in perspective, a brisk 15-minute walk will burn more. It's not the fat-melting furnace people claim it is.
Now this one is huge for athletes. Does it speed up recovery? Well, yes and no. It absolutely reduces that next-day muscle soreness, no question. But, and this is a big one, there's a trade-off. That soreness is part of the inflammation that signals your muscles to repair themselves and grow back stronger. By stamping out that signal with an ice bath, some research suggests you might actually be slowing down your long-term muscle and strength gains. So it's a classic case of less pain today, maybe for less gain tomorrow.
Now let's dig into a really fascinating and honestly a kind of counterintuitive question. What about for people with Raynaud's syndrome? A condition where cold is the known trigger for their symptoms. Could a cold plunge possibly be a treatment?
So here's the debate. On one side, the risk is incredibly obvious. Cold is the thing that causes the problem in the first place. But on the other side, there is this theory that maybe, just maybe, controlled, careful cold exposure could help desensitize the body's over-the-top reaction over time. But let me be crystal clear. This is highly speculative. There's very little science to back this up. The verdict? The risks almost certainly outweigh the potential benefits for most people, and this is absolutely something you must discuss with your doctor, not something to experiment with on your own.
Okay, so let's say you've listened to all the pros and cons, you've decided you don't have any of the risk factors, and you want to try it. How do you start safely? The key here is to treat it like you're learning a new skill, not like you're trying to pass some test of toughness.
Right, if you're going to do this, these 4 steps are completely non-negotiable. Step 1, and I can't say this enough, get medical clearance from your doctor, seriously. Step 2, get your space ready before you get in. That means a thermometer, a timer, and warm towels within arm's reach. Step 3, and this is so important, never ever plunge alone, especially for your first week. And finally, step 4, focus on your breath. Long, slow exhales are your best friend for overriding that initial gasp reflex and managing the shock.
And here's what a safe, gradual start actually looks like. I want you to notice we're not starting anywhere near freezing. Day 1 is at a brisk 59 or 60 degrees Fahrenheit for just a minute or two. The whole point here is adaptation, not endurance. Each day you just nudge the temperature down a little and the time up a little. This isn't a race. You have to listen to your body.
And finally, we've arrived at arguably the most important part of this whole conversation, safety. A cold plunge is a major stressor on the body, and, for some people, it's not a beneficial challenge. It's a flat-out dangerous risk.
This quote really says it all. The whole idea behind cold plunging is a concept called hormesis. That's the idea that a little bit of a stressor can actually make you stronger. But hormesis has limits, and what helps one person can seriously harm another. That line is different for every single one of us.
So for some groups, the risk is just way too high. We're talking about a hard no. If you have any kind of heart or vascular condition, like high blood pressure or an arrhythmia, if you have a history of fainting or seizures, if you have a known cold-related condition like cold urticaria, if you have nerve damage from advanced diabetes, or if you're pregnant, the ice bath is not for you. This is a clear case where the risks just vastly outweigh any possible benefits.
And for anyone who does try this, these are not feelings you push through. These are your body's emergency eject button. Any chest pain or pressure, severe shortness of breath, feeling dizzy or confused, an irregular or pounding heartbeat, or numbness that doesn't go away after you warm up, if you feel any of those, your session is over. You get out immediately. No exceptions.
So after all that, what's the bottom line? Here it is. For the right person, done safely and gradually, a cold plunge can be a powerful hormetic tool. It can help boost your mood and build mental resilience. But it is not a magic bullet for weight loss, and it is most definitely not a universal prescription for health and longevity that everyone should be doing.
And that really leaves us with a much bigger question, one that goes way beyond ice baths. In this world that is just saturated with the next big wellness trend, how do we all get better at telling the difference between a beneficial challenge and a totally unnecessary risk? Figuring that out might just be the most important health skill we can learn.